There we go. That's what we like to hear here on the Rec Poker Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Reed. I'm so excited to be here. If you don't know about Rec Poker, we are a vibrant and encouraging poker learning community that's free to join. And I encourage everyone to go to rec.poker and sign up. All it takes is an email address and a smile. And one of the positive people that we like to talk to is Jared Tendler. So we'll talk to Jared in just a moment. But I want to start by just mentioning that we've been doing these rec poker road trips. I'm calling in right now from Las Vegas, Nevada for the WSOP. It's been a phenomenal time down here, staying in the rec poker house and hanging out with all these fantastic members, rubbing elbows with the poker cognoscenti. And we're going to be doing something like this similar. We're going back to the Run Good Council Bluffs tour. So we're going to be in Iowa from November 11th to 14th. And I encourage everyone to come along and join in the fun. We have a great time working out with Run Good and playing in these events. It's just great hanging out with other members, railing each other, cheering each other on. Of course, going over those nasty bust out hands. But we've been doing this over Zoom for 2 years, but there's just nothing like doing it in person. So I hope people go to rec.poker/road trips, and then you can check out some of the details of this upcoming Iowa trip and some of the other trips that we've taken in the past, which have just been sort of like honestly a highlight for 2021, getting a chance to get together and spend some time with folks. But the folks we're spending time with right now, I'm Jim Reed, Jared Tendler on the line, calling in from Pennsylvania. And I'm excited to have you on here, Jared. Thank you back. Thank you, and welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Good to be here.
Yeah. So you said you're stuck surrounded by Eagles fans up there in Pennsylvania. How are you handling that? That seems like a pretty traumatic experience.
Yeah, and it was brutal too because my brother-in-law is from this area, and so I even before I moved here, I was getting kind of bombarded with it, Thanksgivings and holidays, and so yeah, it was up close and personal way earlier than I would have preferred, but it was maybe a bit of kind of preparation for actually moving here and kind of knowing what I was in for.
Yep, that's true. Like a little inoculation, because I know it's not tough for Giants fans having to live near Pennsylvania. So I'm glad you were able to build up a little resistance to that in advance.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't know what I was in for.
Yeah. So what have you been, other than moving to Pennsylvania, what have you been getting up to? I know it's been a while since we had you on the show, but you've got a lot of exciting projects that you're always working on. What's new and exciting?
Yeah. I mean, I think last time we spoke, there was this time where I was heavily involved in esports. So I was working, the head of sports psychology for Team Liquid, which is a whole other world. So that was cool. But then, in the last 3 years, I've been working on this new trading book called The Mental Game of Trading, which just came out in April. That was a massive project, but it really kind of took a lot of what I had learned from the trading world over the last 8 years and kind of took what I wrote in The Mental Game of Poker and kind of upgraded the system. So yeah, that was exciting to kind of pour through. I realized that I really need to be writing and producing material because it just keeps me agile and keeps my brain moving. If I kind of don't do that for a while, I get bored. I'm kind of less interested, and I don't know. I love what I do, so there needs to be kind of that movement. Otherwise, I get a little annoyed. So, but I also, if I'm only focused on helping other people achieve their goals, I also get a little squirrely. So I'm happy to report that I'm kind of rapidly getting back into golf, getting some instruction. I've been working with a personal trainer who is phenomenal and regaining some mobility as a 43-year-old in my back that I thought was just going to be, par for the course. And yeah, it's kind of exciting. So, I'm kind of 2 months in and, starting to see some increase in distance. And so, we'll see what next 6 months look like, but I'm really going to kind of ramp that up and look to start playing some big events again next year and the next couple of years, with the goal of playing another US Mid-Am, maybe a US Am, maybe a US Open, though that would be one of those things where it's a good, I've heard stories of guys that won't play in it. They're great players. They probably have a decent chance of qualifying, but they don't try to qualify because they don't actually want to play on a US Open course under US Open conditions with people.
Right.
So I understand that. For me, it would be, nice to get over the hump of, playing in the second stage of the sectional qualifying for the US Open is basically a PGA Tour event because, 75 players out of the 156, are get automatic qualification. So you get like really big name players in these sectional qualifiers. So to kind of rub elbows with them for a day would be pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I'm a recreational golfer and I'm a recreational poker player. I think I've reached the point in my career where I'm actually a better poker player than a golfer, which is interesting. So that's like, it's in a similar way. Recce's like me coming down to Las Vegas and playing in the WSOP. I don't think any of us are expecting to go like crush the field, but it's part of that, like, crossing it off the list and having that experience and testing yourself against the best, right? That's part of what
Totally.
that experience is.
Yeah, exactly. And for me with golf, like I want to play great courses under tournament conditions. I had a client who is a member at Baltusrol, which for those that don't know, Baltusrol is top 40 club in the country, but it's also hosted like numerous U.S. Opens and PGAs over the years. And playing it on a Saturday was like playing it in one of the best conditioned golf courses I've ever played. The greens are running, it's conceivably actually faster than most PGA Tour events. Not quite up to U.S. Open or PGA tournament speed, but to go play and on tournaments like on courses like that in tournament conditions to me is just super fun, and it's totally different. I actually played with a buddy of mine at a different course, which was also really well conditioned. He's probably like a 25 or 30 handicap, but this golf course just completely ate him alive. He
Yeah.
didn't realize like how big of a difference there is when you play on a course like that versus kind of the members country club style where the greens are running, quite a lot slower. They're not quite undulating. You can get away with a lot of stuff you can't on these courses. And that it's super fun. I loved it. I mean, and he hated it, which, caused him to drink more than I did, but
Perfect.
we still had a good time nonetheless.
Yeah, well, I think that's a pretty good corollary to poker because on some of those on the courses that are designed for pros, even things like where the fairway bunkers are, they're meant to be in play for those long drive hitters off the tee. And so it is a different experience playing as a recreational player. And I think that's the same. Honestly, I do think that's the same for poker. Like being down here in the WSOP, the traps you have to look out for on the tables are different than the traps back at your local casino because the people laying the traps are much better at it and they're doing it in a way that you're not used to. So I wonder. So well, that's one of the things I want to talk about a little bit here because mental game is a big part of that. And I think like I'm very good at not tilting. I've got a positive attitude. I've got a long view perspective on what matters. So I indulge in a little tilt from now and then just because that's part of the experience too. But I'm pretty good at shaking off a brick unless I like really screwed something up myself, which is also true on the golf course. I think when people like me, we get like the most tilted when it's something like an error that we made or an unforced error or something like that. And I think that's the area where, your work can really help us the most. Preventing those unforced errors, dealing with the emotional fallout when you do make them, and then also just dealing with the peaks and valleys of variance when it comes to tournament poker. So, I mean, you've done a lot of work in the past already, putting the books together, and I know lots of other ways for people to study the mental game and to kind of work on that themselves. And I think it is really valuable to recreational players. When you're talking about this, I know you do most of your active coaching with more skilled, more professional players. But what are some of the things that recreational players could like? What's some of the low hanging fruit that we could really just seize on? Someone like me who's in this position, kind of shooting their shot, punching above their weight, but maybe with a slightly less positive attitude. How can we help them kind of get through this grind a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Your parallels here are really strong in terms of what we're trying to do here. I think for recreational players, we're trying to do a lot in small spaces, I think is really the rub, right? I mean, the fact that it's recreational means you don't have a lot of time to kind of study and prepare and practice. And so, the squeezing out kind of advantages in small spaces is really key. And a lot of it comes down to preparation. I mean, to get yourself ready to handle the variety of different things that are going to get thrown your way, versus kind of just going in, with a little bit of the like, let's see what happens, kind of mentality. Use your past experience, right? And just think about what were those. I mean, you could do it from a strategic standpoint, right? What were some of those traps that you struggled with before, right? The game obviously is continually evolving, but it doesn't, evolve that rapidly. And there are lots of ways that recreational players can still be very difficult outs for seasoned pros. You know, they're playing a different game sometimes, right? And you can make that game a lot more difficult for them, and in some ways actually beat them because they're actually just playing the wrong game based on what's going on. And that, you know, when I look at, I mean, obviously I'm giving the pros this advice, okay, which is you got to play against your competition. You can't be just playing this like kind of blind GTO style and just thinking that that's going to work all the time. And, you know, especially in a live environment, right? That stuff can, I mean, the frequencies make a lot more sense online than they do live.
Yeah.
So there is still a lot of opportunity. And I think a lot of times recreational players, they kind of out-level themselves and what they're trying to do. So I think you're 100% spot on that the biggest thing you want to avoid is feeling like you underperformed relative to what you're capable of right now. And so how do you do that? You go in with the mentality that says, I'm going to find out how good I am. I'm going to play my game, because if I attempt to play their game, not only do you have zero chance, you're going to get wiped out really quickly because you can't. You just don't play it.
Yeah.
And maybe the corollary here with golf, you know, kind of holds up, because golf does allow you to play your own game on that course because the opponent is really the course, and it becomes more about how well you understand the conditions by which you're playing in to make your strategic adjustments. And I think that's the thing you really have to kind of take in here. You're not the odds are not insurmountable.
Right.
They are stacked against you for sure, but that's not why you're there, right? That's not why you're there. If you were there solely to win, you'd be doing a lot more and you'd be getting a lot closer to being a pro, right? It's more about the experience, having fun, and again, feeling like you've got a chance, feeling like what you can do is actually, you know, not just getting kind of completely destroyed. So you really do have to kind of have the balls to be able to say, this is what I want, and I'm going to go down swinging. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But this is what I want from the experience. I think sometimes, especially as you get deeper into a tournament, mentality changes, and now all of a sudden you see very big numbers,
right,
you know, on the horizon, and it becomes more about the result, and it changes your decision making. And now the odds are significantly stacked against you, right? And so kind of having the balls and the guts to do something dumb, seemingly in a big spot, and knowing that's okay.
Yeah.
Because the money that's available to you on the surface may seem life-changing, or especially, you know, you win the Millionaire Maker, like that's a lot of money, right? $600K after taxes. Yeah, still a lot of money. Yep. But like, you know, it's not gonna, like, it shouldn't change your life, right? The money is not going to be so consequential. The bracelet, that's the thing. That's the thing that nobody can take away from you. The money you might blow.
Yeah.
We hope is for life. But, you know, I think, again, it comes down to preparation and just being really clear about the challenges you're going to face and having a good game plan to face that. And, you know, I think if you do those things, I'm not going to say it makes it easy, because tournament poker can be hard at times, but it certainly can be easier and give you like a fighting chance at this point.
Yeah, I think that's bang on, man. Like, I'm down here playing in my first bracelet series. I've played in a couple. I found a cash in the ridiculous flip and go tournament, so that was fun. But the best poker I played this whole trip was in the freeze out yesterday. For our listeners who are hearing this, on October 13th, there was a $1,000 freeze out bracelet event. Definitely some of the best poker I've played. I feel great about almost every decision I made. I busted before the money just as it went out, but I feel like that felt like a huge victory to me. I didn't really screw anything up. I made, like, you know, a couple little trivial errors, but I do feel like, you know, being process oriented and not being results oriented, particularly in poker, like that's got to be a key to just maintaining a level attitude and not losing your head, and just being, you know, like you said, like what is the expectation here? What does success look like? What are we actually trying to accomplish here? And playing your game. We do talk about this all the time. Out leveling yourself, or like laying traps for people that are not experienced enough to even see that trap. And so you end up just trapping yourself. And I think you're right about the pros. There was a few times where I could see pros on our tables playing in like a GTO. Like when you get to Showdown, you see that they were playing in a GTO manner, but versus this field is like, man, just play the value hands, and you could have saved yourself a lot of chips there. So it's something that I think transcends the skill levels too, right? Like some of the best players down here are also not really adapting their play to the field that they're in. So they're giving up huge advantage there by doing so. So
yeah, I mean, if there's one thing that's common, right, it's that pros overvalue their skill.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, that's a societal issue, right? People by and large are overconfident, right? If you do research and say, how intelligent do you think you are? How good looking do you think you are? How good is your sense of humor, right? 70 to 75% of people think that they have above average.
I love that.
Yeah. So 25% of people are dead wrong, okay? And maybe more for all we know.
Right.
So the point is, right, you got a lot of overvaluing. It's really difficult to know what your edge is. And as a pro, especially now we're what, like, kind of 20 plus events deep in the main, in the series, there ought to be enough knowledge about the player pool, right, to kind of know what adjustments you need to make. And I promise you that there are a lot of pros that are still not making the adjustments because they're overvaluing, right, what they know and how players should play. Right?
Yeah.
It's something you hear all the time. I hear all the time, right? So tilted because they should have done X versus, man, I really misperceived what that guy was capable of. And so, yeah, wow, kudos to you. I'll adjust. No one says that. No one says that. Right. And so that's your advantage, right? Your advantage. Yeah. But if you're overconfident or you're not confident enough, then it just gets a lot tougher for you. So, I know we haven't kind of gotten into it yet, but like, this new, kind of video series that I produced to help players prepare for big tournaments like this. One of so there are kind of two key modules in this series. The first one is goal setting. The second one is what I call know your game. And those are the ones you got to do every single time before you go play. Mm-hmm. All right. So we've already talked about the goal setting piece, right? And so it doesn't take a lot of time, but just get clear on what you want, what things you're going to face. And then second to that, define a little bit of the dimensions of what makes you skilled. When you're playing well, how do you know you're playing well? What are you doing? When you're off a little bit, right? B game, what does that look like? What does C game look like? If you do those two things, right? So the goal setting and the know your game, you're running downhill at this point. Right?
Yeah.
You are, it's impossible for you not to play better. A. B, it's impossible for you not to learn more about your game and as a result of that, then be better ready for the next tournament series.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just simple stuff, right? Doesn't take a lot of time, just takes the mentality that says, I want to be better prepared, right? I want to be proactive, right? We're doing this in the middle of the series. So maybe this isn't the right thing for everybody that's already there, right? You can kind of backtrack, right? If you haven't gone yet, right, there's still time. But maybe it's more we're kind of planting seeds for a larger shift in the poker community, right? Which I think is taking more time to be proactive, right? So many poker players just are just way too reactive, right? I mean, let's take Phil Hellmuth's big blow up the other day, right? So, I mean, I coined the term, a decade ago, entitlement tilt, and in the book, right, Phil Hellmuth is the poster child for it. And he's gone through cycles, right? And we can all say, sure, right, some of it was promotional, and there was a lot of reasons for the tilt, and but I think at the end of the day, I mean, we know that he is, one of the most driven players out there to win and to historically win, right? He wants his place permanent, and so I respect all that, right? The proactive piece here, right, is that's out there as an issue, right? Where's the aggressiveness in wanting to fix it? So I'm not meaning to call out Phil specifically, although our discussion on Twitter might suggest otherwise. But I'm trying to call out the larger ethic in the poker world, which says, and look, all of you who are successful in other areas of your life, right, do this, right? You take
Right.
time to prepare.
Right.
And if you do some small things to better prepare, you make the outcomes better, period. Right. And sometimes those outcomes are more of those process pieces of, all right, well, I played better, I focused better, right? Because my phone was away. I took care of, things that I needed to so that I wasn't interrupted. I understood some of the landmines from a strategic standpoint, some of the landmines from a tilt standpoint. So I was just better aware. And then that awareness then translates into adaptability in real time. And, look, I mean, you said it earlier, like the last thing you want to do is beat yourself. The last thing you want to do is beat yourself in a big spot.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Fun is still the name of the game, but man, if you have a chance to make a final table, to get heads up for a bracelet, to play up against some of the big name players that you're excited to play against, you want to play well.
Yeah.
And at least play as well as you could. If you could have done better, cool, lesson learned for the next time, but don't beat yourself first is the name of the game.
Yeah, and particularly in tournaments, you can't. It's like in cash games, every hand's a new game, every hand's a new hand. You can win what you've got on the table, but in tournaments, you really can't win the tournament on any one hand, but you sure can lose it. And there are, I think, especially for recreational players like us, there are these opportunities to lose that some of us just don't recognize, or we even recognize and then do it anyway because we don't, I'm not sure, but I've definitely seen, people write into me and ask me about, they feel like they've even sort of like sabotaged themselves in real time because they knew it wasn't the right play, but they did it anyway. And stuff like that. I think like there's some real low hanging fruit when it just comes to avoiding those catastrophes for recreational players. And I don't know if you refer to that as like lopping off your C game or what you would say about that. But I think for a lot of us, it's not even about making our A game that much better. It's just avoiding these pitfalls, these landmines that make it harder for us to, even when we're doing well, boom, in one hand, like all of a sudden, all that's for nothing. So let's talk about your new course here, because I really like the way you're laying it out here. You've got these different modules set up that kind of take players through different stages of how you'd like them to think about their game. And there is sort of like an evolution to it. So how did you construct this structure, and what made you decide that this was the best way to put this in front of people?
Yeah, so kind of in my kind of time off this summer from coaching, just gave me a chance to kind of play some golf and reflect. And one of the things I sort of saw is, I saw now like a different schedule for the World Series. Like, could I put something together to help people prepare? Because invariably I get the influx of clients coming to get help as they prepare for a tournament series like that. And just as like they do for W Hoop and other big online series and live series. And so, really this kind of started in 2014, helping you at Van Hoof prepare for the main event final table, which we had 4 months to do.
Right.
And like that kind of like what we did there kind of created a framework for, what I eventually was doing with players, both recreational and obviously more so tournament players, but before every tournament series. And we started to kind of create this cycle where we're kind of going through, these sort of checklists in a sense, like looking at different areas of their game and seeing what's strong, what's weak, what do you want to focus on in this series, right? It's a only 2-week one. So, endurance is not really that big of an issue, but, maybe it's more final table play, it's handling pressure, it's burnout. And we just I just sort of saw the patterns with which I was preparing these players for, series over series, right? And constructed it in a way that was very much like, it's called a mental game tune-up, because it's designed to be like you take your car, in for service, and, they run through that multi-point inspection and they check off all the spots that are doing well. And it's like fuel injection, man, it's time. And so that's the rub here. So basically, like I said, the first two modules of setting your goals and knowing your game, you really want to do that before every tournament series, because it's just as like, there's an evolution to your game. I don't care how frequently you play or don't, right? Your life is dynamic, you're dynamic. And so the things you want are going to change. You need to account for that, right? Your game changes. You need to account for that. If you're going to play well, you need to know what you're bringing in.
Yeah.
And so those two modules really are there. Then we get into, all right, handling tilt, and other emotional issues, right? Avoiding burnout, depending on how much you're going to play, right? Getting in the zone more often, handling pressure, improving focus, and then improving decision making. And so there you kind of get 6 modules to kind of pick and choose from, right? And so to me, the course becomes the thing that you can use series over series, turn the series over, like throughout the year, to just go back and be like, all right, what am I going to focus on here? And it just creates this sort of cycle of growth in a way that's really, really kind of simple and kind of easy to navigate. And because that's what I'm doing with clients, right? It's like the material is really not going to change a lot, right? You just have to be considering it. So the way I designed the course was very much like, I am coaching you. Yeah. And that's what I wanted. I wanted you to feel like we are right now, reaching through the camera and helping you kind of walk through to develop, the strategies and tools that you need, to be a little bit better prepared. And so we've got like kind of this combination of like conceptual video and then like this kind of practical, like I'm going to walk you through the steps, step by step, on how to create the tools. Yeah.
Cause that's something like, I think, and at Rec Poker in particular, like we talk a lot about the abstract notions of theory and, how to prepare yourself and, like very high level. But we don't get into like the application of it is a difficult part. I mean, particularly for recreational players, like it's one thing to know frequencies in your mind, but then actually at the table to express that. So I guess, is there a way, 'cause one of the things I want to talk about is your module 8, train your decision-making process. I don't know if that's the right place for this, but can you just talk about that difficulty, when the difference between the abstract knowledge and actually applying it at the table? And is there a way to practice that, or to sort of think about it differently to feel like you're in a better position to do that?
Yeah, there is. I mean, I think the biggest mistake players make is to think that, doing theory, watching videos, talking with players, that there's sort of this equal sign between what you know at that time when you're not playing to what's going to show up when you do play.
Yeah.
We're talking golf. It's like thinking, the shots that I hit on the driving range are just suddenly going to show up when I go play.
Yeah.
Right. And I work with traders, right? Thinking that like trading a simulated market, right? Everything is exactly the same. Right. But yet you're different.
Yeah.
When it's your money on the line, when it's your dreams on the line, your goals on the line, your time, you are different. And so what that means is that if you're not, kind of going in with the mentality of like, let's see how much I can bring over from the practice and training environment to the table, right? Let's see how much I can bring over. If you don't have that mentality, you're going to expect too much. And when you start to make some mistakes that you think you ought not to, then some loss of confidence, some tilt, some fear is going to emerge, which is only going to shrink that and make it harder for you to bridge the gap. So I think what's nice now is that you start to see this, kind of influx of new, like kind of online training environments, right, where you can go play against a bot and practice making decisions, or you can go load in a bunch of hands that you've played, throw it into a hand replayer, and practice making decisions like you're actually playing the hand out in real time again. And so what does that do? It trains your decision-making process, because you have to think about your decision-making process like I think about my golf swing.
Right.
There's a technique to it. And, the way that I would frame it is there's a difference between the process by which you dig into your knowledge base to pull out the right answer versus your knowledge base.
Right. So good point.
Most recreational players are more focused on building their knowledge base. They're not focused on building the process to pull out the right answer in that moment and train that, because those two things are different components. For pros, they don't focus on this as much either. Okay. But because they're playing so much more, there's more of a kind of convergence. There's a synergy between those two things. They kind of grow along with each other. Mm-hmm. But recreational players tend to like think more, play more at times that are different than a World Series, right? So the home games, that ain't the same thing. That's the driving range still.
That's the driving range, yeah.
That's the driving range. But you got to treat it, right? So the overtraining, right, that professional athletes do, right? They treat the driving range at times like it's the golf course.
Yeah.
Right. At times it's no, this is training. I'm working on this thing. At other times it's like, no, I want to hit these shots frequently over and over again, because I can practice in a way that I can't in the course.
Yeah.
there's got to be that bridge. Otherwise, so to get really practical, and this is what I talk about in that section, okay, in that module, you got to write out your decision-making process. You got to understand how you make decisions when you're making them well. And it's going to take a little bit of practice to kind of write out, naturally what you go through, and then to create some systemization to it. But then once you've got that, now you have something that you can practice. So when you are playing in a home game, right, you can, even though you don't need to, you're going to train and force yourself to go through that. And you might tell your friends like, all right, listen, I'm going to be a bit of a dick today and take more time than I want to, but you guys know I want to go play in the series, so just bear with me, right? And I'll take all the ribbing you want to send me, and it's fine, right? We're all on the same page. Or, right, when you're in that hand replay or you're playing against that bot, you're forcing yourself to go through that process. Then it gives you a chance, right, under pressure, at a time when you're tilted, at a time you're tired, right? Then it becomes, you got a chance to actually sustain yourself and make some good decisions there versus it's just bleh, right? That's what ends up happening, right? You're sitting there for 30 seconds and all you're thinking is, man, did I scratch my face right now? I don't really want to give anything away. But
right.
It's like, no. Like, what are you here?
Well, yeah, because our attention is so limited at the table too, that like just being able to avoid using your mental bandwidth on stuff like that's irrelevant is a skill.
Exactly.
Like just to be able to marshal your attention to be focusing on the things that are most important. My dad, who taught me how to golf, he always said, like, you can pretend that you're on the course when you're at the driving range and do your practice there. Do anything you would normally do on the course at the driving range, but don't experiment on the course. Don't do things new or for the first time on the course. Do that at the driving range, and then do your experimenting there, do your practicing there, and then come and perform on the course. And like that, I feel like some of us, we get in these situations and we're like, oh, well, I'm really gonna have to up my game to be playing down here. And so then, like you said at the very top, you're playing, you're experimenting, you're putting yourself in uncomfortable situations in exactly the worst time. It's like, do that in the home game, man. Go to rec.poker/home games and play that in the free money thing we do every night, and then see how it works, and get some feedback from people there. So I really think that's true, and so I like this idea of training your decision making process, and that's something that you really have to do, just like with swing thoughts and muscle memory and getting those reps in, right? Because the more of this stuff we can internalize and make it very natural and easy, the less we even have to think about that at the table. So now we've got all this brain space available to think about our opponents and their ranges and that kind of thing. So
that also kind of feeds into the cycle, kind of tournament series over tournament series. It's like, if you haven't gone to the series yet, or for you now, it's like, don't think about perfection here. Just think about how can I improve my decision making in some small ways this time. If I nail that, then I can layer in the next one the next time.
Yeah.
Right. The problem, I think, a lot of times is you try to do too much at once, and then you end up doing less or make it worse. Right. So again, we're looking for just small things that you can do to just level up a little bit, and then series over series, year over year. Right. That's where the gaps get really big. That's what the pros know how to do well. And I think the recreational players end up, both in golf and in poker, just kind of get off. Right. They want so badly to kind of jump up and do something special.
Right.
But a lot of times something special is just being a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're a little bit better frequently, the changes happen pretty dramatically over just a longer period of time.
Yeah. Like that old saw about just getting 1% better every day, right? Like if you're just getting a little bit better every day, that's actually a great road to improvement. And it's kind of unrealistic to expect to just spend a little time studying and then all of a sudden be at this phenomenal level as a poker player or something. Like, I think, and we talked about before, like just being realistic about expectations. And, I think for a lot of people, like happiness is when reality conforms to their expectations. But good luck changing reality, folks. But you do have some control over your expectations, right? And so if you can have like realistic assumptions, if you can make good assumptions about other people and about like what you're actually trying to do, that you're gonna have more fun. You're gonna be happy.
Maybe this is why you're so happy, Jim.
Must be. Must be. So I've been going through the modules. I want to drill down deeper into 7 and 8 in particular.
Okay.
But I can see already that this would be helpful not just to pros, but to players like me and folks that are trying to get better, or even just beginners, because I think they've got a lot of that room to improve in this area that they can then start stacking on some strategy and that kind of thing. Because you need a foundation of a solid head before you can even plan to be a phenomenal player. Is there anything else about the course that you'd like to mention to our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other, kind of exciting thing, which is like kind of a first, is that, so I talked about kind of the concept video and then like kind of the practical video, but then I also did coaching with Matt Affleck, who many
Yes,
listeners, kind of know fondly, and
definitely.
also Diego Ventura, who they may not know, but should know because he's a top 20 player online in the world.
Hmm.
So highly skilled player. Kind of coach them through each of the 8 modules. So you see, kind of the theory, the practicality for you, and then you get to kind of look under the hood about what some of the best players in the world are doing to prepare themselves, and kind of the things that they're thinking about. I think the most revealing thing, if I were to kind of generalize what you'd see, is the level of honesty, is the level of precision,
Yeah.
is the level of kind of like acknowledgement of weaknesses and trouble points.
Hmm.
It's like, I'm thinking about, the course as a whole. And I know for sure that there are a lot of players out there, both recreational and pro, that don't think that they need this. They look at the modules and say, it's easy to kind of, right. But there again comes in your thought here about, expectations not aligning with reality. I'm not saying that you need this. I'm just saying it's way more efficient,
Right.
to actually have somebody walk you through it, because
Oh, yeah.
to do it on your own,
Yeah.
tournament series over tournament series, year over year, is just difficult. And so when you kind of have this kind of guidance, to make it much more simplistic and roadmappy, so that a lot of the decisions for you are kind of taken off the table, and you just have to just be more honest and self-assessing about where you're at and what you need, then the course really works for you. But I think a lot of people are just going to kind of look at it on the surface and be like, yeah, I get it. I mean, I can do all that.
Right.
And the reality is, yeah, you can, but can you do it as efficiently? And the answer is there's no way. And so, for $500, we'll say 450 because of the discount you guys will provide them. Is it worth it? Right. And again, we look at, all right, well, this is the thing you could use for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
You could use it for the next 5 years. I mean, there's no way that it doesn't provide return if you buy into what it can do for you. And if it doesn't, and you can't see that, then that's fine. I mean, I want people to get high value from my material, right? The poker books, coaching, video series like this, I'm always about kind of high yield for what you're investing in. And in this case, it's, I think a little bit of money, a little bit of time, and the yield should be there.
And that's the real point, because I've been a relatively serious amateur player for 15 or 20 years, but I only joined Rec Poker 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, or something like that. And up until I did, I was a solitary poker learner. I was learning in a silo. I was watching videos on my own. I was reading books. I was listening to podcasts. And what would have really helped me if I'd been smart enough to realize it at the time was that, yes, you can make incremental progress by just studying on your own, but you're not going to live forever. And if you could learn faster, then I'm 41 now, I could have reached this level of skill at 30 if I had just had someone to show me the roadmap, to walk me down the path and say, let me save you some time learning some of these lessons. I think a lot of players like me, we want to learn from our own mistakes. We want to feel that we're only going to learn if we feel the pain ourselves. But that's dumb. And it's really, it's painful. It's inefficient. It's a stupid thing to do. So there are no new problems in poker. Everyone's made all the mistakes already. Just learn from their pain, learn from their mistakes, and then just take it seriously enough. And so this guided path, I think, is something that whatever path people are wanting to take, you just don't have all the time in your life to do it yourself. So get some help, get some shortcuts, have someone shine the light on the path and show you how to move forward more quickly. And yeah, you talk it's $500 for the course, and we are going to do a discount if people use the code RECPOKER. They get 10% off, which is fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Jared. but it's like, how valuable is 5 years of your life that you're going to spend learning this on your own? So I wish more people would just, and even at Rec Poker, just like reaching out to some of us on the leadership team about just getting help with stuff. Like I wish more people would just say, hey, I just wish I could get some help me improve a little, because for a lot of us, there's some real low hanging fruit that's going to take us forever to learn on our own.
I mean, I'm gonna be a little bit specific here, and I'm not gonna maybe overgeneralize, okay? But I know that this is true for both genders.
Yes, okay, fair.
But men, by and large, have trouble saying those exact words, like "I could use some help."
Right.
And I get it, right? We have the built-in assumption that we can, and you can.
Right.
But what's more efficient, right? And so, I a good friend of ours, down the street, 65-year-old guy, fell off a ladder, right? Broke a couple ribs, didn't go to a doctor for 4 days, right? Until he couldn't breathe.
Right.
Barry Carter, who wrote the book with me, his father went blind for 3 days, for 2 days, and didn't tell his wife he couldn't see. Okay. Now, I mean, what are we doing here? As a gent, what are we thinking? Is it that bad? Is it so awful to say you don't know something? Is it so awful to say you need help?
Right.
I mean, on the surface, yeah. You think there's going to be ridicule and people they think you're dumb. If they do, it says more about them.
True. So true. So true.
Nobody who's your friend, nobody who at Reg Poker is going to say, "Oh, what a fish, idiot, dumbass." No, it's literally the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Hey, we're excited for you. Let's get in here. Let's do some good work and, have some fun. And yeah, you can still do stuff independently, but have a core, of people that you collaborate with and get help from.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's really what it comes down to, I think, is understanding that there's an opportunity cost to working on your own. And that opportunity cost is the progress that you could be making by working with other people. So you just got to decide, what's important to me? Is it having all, this time to do it on my own and maybe never getting as good as I could? Or is it just getting as good as getting as skills as I possibly could be and working with other people to do it? Because I guarantee you, if listeners, you will become an exponentially better player if you learn with other people. If you have people just to talk through your questions with, to get different perspectives on, people are going to have an angle on something that you never thought about. And all it takes is making yourself vulnerable, putting yourself out there and saying, you know what, actually, I don't have all the answers, but I have an open mind to learning. And that's what it's going to take to succeed, because otherwise you're just going to be banging your head against the wall. And maybe you'll even be having fun. Don't get me wrong. I sure did. But I just wish I'd taken more help earlier, because I know I'd be a much better player now. And I don't know how many years I have left to keep getting better at poker. But if I was 10 years better now, I'd have 10 more years to get even better at the back end. So, all right. Well, I know I've gotten a lot out of this. I think our listeners will as well. Can you tell us, Jared, where they can go to sign up for this? And we'll have a link in the Rec Poker shop as well. But just in case that doesn't get put up in time for this episode to come out, let our listeners know.
Yeah, so it's jaredtendler.com is my website. Kind of a big upgrade to it this year, which is cool.
Nice.
There's actually a lot of free resources on there, right? So you can download worksheets, that you can use as part of building a tilt profile or doing an A to C game analysis. The tools that I use in my coaching, are kind of freely available there. I also wrote a free intuition ebook. It's written for traders, but if you haven't read The Mental Game of Poker 2, it kind of takes some of those kind of key components and brings it out and makes the idea of intuition a bit more understandable. And I talk about it in the course, but the course is on the website. You'll see it. There's a nice little section in the header, and then just be sure to use the promo code Rec Poker in the checkout process, and you get access to it immediately. I will say that it's in the pipeline. I don't know exactly when it's going to happen. But pretty soon this thing is going to be an app that you'll be able to download on your phone.
Yep.
So you'll be able to access it offline and really kind of anywhere. So, I wouldn't buy the course wanting that thing, right? buy the course because, the material will help you. But as a feature, that's in a pipeline. And so the course just lives on my website, and, you get access to it, as soon as you sign up.
Nice. And like I said, it's 8 modules. Each one's between an hour and a half, or between an hour and 2 hours. So there's about 13 total hours of content there, which is great. And people, please do use that code RecPoker, get 10% off, and tell Jared that we sent you. So Jared, where can we reach you on Twitter? And what else do you want to say to Rec Poker Nation before we wrap this baby up?
Yeah, so at Jared Tendler on Twitter. And then I also have been doing these monthly kind of Q&As called Office Hours. I just had one yesterday, actually. They're on YouTube now, but they're streamed live. So they're free to attend, come join me, kind of a live stream, get your answers, get your questions answered, kind of getting a pretty decent community of people, between, 300 to 400 people kind of showing up every day.
Awesome.
For each of these, kind of once a month. So, it's kind of a no-brainer, to attend, and you can, post your questions on my website earlier. You'll see it under the resources. There's an office hours section. You can post your questions, and then I'll kind of prioritize those. You also can appear live with me, kind of if those of you who've seen the show Frasier, kind of like the live on air, getting help, kind of hotline. If you want to show up and talk about, your particular question for a couple minutes, we'll do that too. So that's been a kind of an exciting addition. I haven't been doing the podcast of late. This has kind of been taking a different kind of form of, to me, the same kind of thing. Just basically finding ways that I can add value to the community. So
and being available like in real time, right? Like that's something that a lot of people crave, and it's a way to help people the most. Like we do a lot of training stuff at Rec Poker, and the most effective stuff is when it's either one-to-one or one with a group, but live in real time, being able to ask and answer questions and like go down a few rabbit holes and find those tangents that are interesting at the time, right? So, and I'll say if anyone has any trouble finding any of this stuff, just go to rec.poker/resources, and we'll have links to all this stuff there as well. Well, thank you so much, Jared. I always enjoy listening to you, and I had a lot of fun today. It's nice to talk to someone who's got such a good head on their shoulders when it comes to all this stuff, and you've got a lot of great stuff to share with Rec Poker Nation. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jim. Great to talk to you, and great to help out your community.
All right. Well, I want to thank. I should have thanked Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, and website AMP. Thank you to Jared Tendler and Steve Fredland, who couldn't be here. Everyone else, we'll see you again sometime soon. Bye.